Hey you, welcome back to the Human Experience. I'm your host, Sierra Cruz, and this is the place where we talk about all things human, all things life, and everything in between. We are redefining what it means to be human for ourselves rather than listening to what everyone else has to say about it. All right, guys, so today we have a guest. We have Internet Philosopher Mark Taylor, also known as Doctorbangg on TikTok. Hi, Mark, how are you?
Doing great. How are
I'm
you?
good. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm really excited to talk to you. So,
It's gonna be awesome.
yeah, I agree. So the first thing I wanted to start off with, because I know from your TikTok videos that you have some issues with the current societal system and a lot of questions about
Elbow.
all that kind of stuff. Same. So I wanted to start off asking you, like, when did that all start for you? What really started making you question things and feeling like we could do things better, and why do we do things the way we do?
Well, I guess it's a mix of things. So, like, it's along with growing up. I know a lot of people say that you get these thoughts when you start like hitting your 20s, and then they go away supposedly, which I don't see that happening anytime
Right.
soon. But a mix of growing up and also I think the lockdown. I know a lot of people say that, but maybe there's a reason for that. You know what
For
I mean? We
sure.
were all sitting alone, and in my thoughts at least. But it was even after that, like I decided to drop out of college after I realized it wasn't really for me. And I spent a lot of time just like alone trying to like figure out what I want to do.
Hmm.
And I would like journal every single day, and I'm like, I have all these thoughts, I just don't know how to say them, and maybe one day I will be able to say them and it'll have an impact.
Ooh.
And then I started to figure it out like months later, and now it seems to have a positive impact. Well, I don't know about a positive impact, but some sort of impact on the internet. It's shaking up some
Oh,
noise.
I think it definitely does. You're somebody I immediately resonated with because I completely agree that with what you said about I know what I want to say, but I don't really know how to say it. That is
Yeah,
like my Achilles heel. It's how I feel all the time. I'm
yeah.
also too, I suffer from perfectionism a little bit. So sometimes even if I know how I want to say it, I'm like, okay, maybe that's not the best way to say it. Maybe I shouldn't say it that
Oh
way.
my god, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad we can relate on that. So what do you feel like, what are your biggest issues with the current societal climate?
Well, it's kind of just like, and I want to make this clear, it's no one's fault.
Ooh, I love
Everyone likes to
that.
like blame people before them. Oh, it's my parents. Oh, it's the people before them. It's before them.
Hmm.
You can keep doing this all the way back to Adam and Eve, like all the way back, and then she's gonna blame the snake. And the snake, Alan Watts says this, my favorite philosopher. He says, and the snake probably just looked at God and just winked because they know that it's you got to take responsibility somewhere.
Yeah,
It's not
for
always
sure.
people's fault before you. With that being said, you said what's the biggest issue?
Yeah.
I just don't like. I think it's very primitive, the idea that there has to be so many poor people.
Ooh,
I just feel like we're at a time when technology is so good that we're just. How are there still people starving to death
right,
and not having shelter? And like, how is that even a
right.
thing?
I could not agree with you
You know
more.
what I mean? Like,
Yes.
we make all this shit up.
Yes. Oh my
This
God.
is all made up. We're printing money.
Yeah.
So like it's just crazy to think that we've changed into such a we started as a communal foraging societies as like hunter
Right.
gatherers. They lived together as one. And we've kind of moved away from that, and everything is so individual. Life is so individual. Everyone has their own bank account, their own car, their own everything. And I'm not saying we should be sharing like our cars and our houses or anything, but I don't know. I feel like there's at some point we got to get to a point where everybody at least has basic needs to live.
Yes, I completely agree. I think it's really crazy that we've made up a system that denies people of their basic inherent human rights and that we've allowed it to act like it makes sense. Like I can't believe that
Yeah.
we're like cool because we've like started to vilify people that don't conform to the system rather than trying to think like, okay, maybe if it's not working for these people and not working for everybody, why are we doing it this way?
They also it's a very big thing to like. It's easy to say if someone's poor, it's their fault.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Or they're lazy,
Right.
or they're. It's so, and I think that's why the system continues so well the way it does,
Yeah.
because it's easy to just be like, oh, it's their fault. And then it's the thing that bothers me a lot is that money is like a game,
Hmm.
and we all have to learn how to play it. And if you don't, it has nothing to do with real life though. Like, for example, when you put money into an account and it does like compound interest, right? Like some people make careers off interest and their whole wealth off interest. Interest doesn't even exist in the real natural world.
Right.
There's nothing you like. I mean, I guess plants and stuff, you plant them and then they grow after, but like, you know what I mean? It doesn't have any actual value. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we make up,
you know what I'm saying?
100%, because we make up a lot of stuff that doesn't actually make sense, but because we've done it for so long, we're just like, okay, I guess we'll go with it. Everyone else is doing it, so let's do it.
Yeah, and then if you don't understand this game, if you don't get the knowledge to do well in this game of money, you're gonna be poor.
Right.
That's just gonna, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to learn a made up game, and then we all play by it. And it's actually like a fact that if you grow up in a rich family, just from watching Rich Tendencies, you could be the dumbest person in the family and you will still be rich because you've been watching rich activities all your life. You know how they act. You know how they spend their money. You know how they do everything. But if you're like the smartest person in a poor family, you still will have poor tendencies that will challenge you to become rich.
Right. Like,
it's like an interesting
thing.
It
really is, because it's like, not that you are confined to your family circumstance or what has come before you, but if that's the only knowledge base that you've ever been exposed to, how are you going to know how to do anything else?
Right.
And it's like, within this society, it creates such a circumstance of people living in survival mode. So it's like, people only have time and energy to focus on how to make it to the next day rather than to think, okay, I'm not actually happy. How can I make myself happy? It's like we don't have time to actually think about that. We act like it's not important when it's like, I don't really get the point to living life if we're not having a good time. Yeah, it's crazy that like, it's crazy that like, we're okay with that. It's like older people will tell you like, that's just how life is, like, get over it. And it's like, what do you mean by that? Like, life is what you make it. And this is all created by other people just like us. So if we're not happy, why are we just subscribing to it and like acting like we can't change anything?
Right. Why are we doing this if the majority of us are not enjoying it?
Right.
You gotta, at some point you gotta ask that question. Or at least I do.
100%.
You know, like, why are we doing this if it's miserable sometimes? And for most people, sometimes it mostly is because we're stuck working 80 hours a week, you know what I mean?
And it's something like some crazy number in America, like 70 or 90 to 90% of people live like paycheck to paycheck. Like, this system.
Yeah, it's about 70 to 75%.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's more than half of people, like, that the system is not working for, just on a financial monetary basis, not even encompassing everything that goes within society. Like, it's crazy to me how much it's so obvious that it doesn't work, but we're so used to it. We have this level of comfortability with the known aspect of what this society runs like, that it's like we're too afraid to really do anything different. And we're also, we're also conditioned to like be led rather than to lead. So I think that most of it is everyone is kind of depending on the leaders or the government to make these big choices. If something really needed to change, they would change it. And it's like, no, that's what needs changed though. They're what needs changed. So it's like.
Exactly. Yes. Well said. Well said. Because that's just the issue. It's like what we need to change is the people that have the ability to make the change. Right. And they're not going to just hand over the fucking crown. Right. That's not going to happen. Right. Like, when has that ever happened? Because
they're doing it this way on purpose.
And that's the issue.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just like, how are we going to do this? And I don't like, when I say that, some people are like, oh, you're making, like, you sound like you're intimidating or like putting fear out there. I'm like, no, like, this is something we really need to think of. Like, how are we going to do this? Right. And it's no easy task at all. At all.
Yeah, we said that at the same time. At all.
Yeah. And it's funny, people always comment on my stuff. Always. Well, what's your suggestion? What's your plan? Yeah. I go, dude, you know how hard it is to think of a new system or a way to even fix this one? I mean, we could definitely come together and try to figure it out. But if you think one person, if you think me, has the answer to this, I mean, that's just unrealistic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm very familiar with those comments. And I can understand from a basis where they're coming from, where it's like, okay,
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
because like I would love to know that answer myself. But I think the first step is like people talking about what they think is wrong, sharing their perspective, and meeting other people and creating communities where we could come up with something. Because just like you said,
Right.
there is no one person that has all of the answers. There can be one person that inspires many other people to start thinking differently or moving differently. But it's to create mass change, it takes a mass amount of people. Like
And a long
in a long
time.
time. And
Very long
so
time.
I think that like it's very, and I get a lot of comments too where people are like, well, feudalism wouldn't be better. Socialism wouldn't be better. I have all these people that are always attacking the fact that I don't like capitalism, or I don't think it's the best way we could be doing things. They're more like, well, none of the things that already exist are better. Well, we don't have to do anything that already is existing out there. I think that's the point of forward movement. We don't have to go backwards. We
Yes.
can create something new. And I think that people that comment like that sometimes, while I completely get where they're coming from, I think they underestimate the courage that it takes to even put yourself out there to talk about wanting to change these things.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like everyone's like, all right, well, this isn't going to be good. This is going to be good. This isn't going to be good. And they can't think outside of the box to be like, wow, before before feudalism, they didn't have capitalism. And I bet someone was like, hey guys, I got this new system. We're going to have like this made up cash, and like it's going to be like, it's going to have value. And they're going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, that's stupid. No one's going to follow that. And here we are.
Right. Yeah,
It's they can't see past outside the box.
Right. And it's crazy how we've become so comfortable just letting a small group of people make all of these huge decisions. Like the majority of us don't have a real say or real stake in what happens to us, or the policies or the laws or the really big parts of our lives that we follow and subscribe to. Most of us don't actually have a say in that. And that is one of the craziest things. Like I saw one of your videos the other day where you were talking about democracy and how the way that it's currently running is we failed democracy. It's not running in the way that it is advertised as it should. So I would love if you would expand on that a bit, what you meant by that.
Yeah, so it just seems that with the whole two-party system, first of all, I'm not super educated in politics at all, really. I don't know much, but I know it's not very easy to get into the running of president.
Right.
I'm assuming like you have to be pretty wealthy,
Yes.
right? I'm like,
it costs millions of dollars
pay
to
for
even
ads,
run, right?
exactly. So right there, there's an issue
Strike
right
one.
there.
Yeah.
So that takes out maybe 60% of the population. Yeah. And then we're taking that small, I don't even want to say 40%. It's probably like 20%.
Yeah.
They haven't even experienced what all the other people, the people that are voting for them, they haven't experienced even what they're experiencing.
The majority too.
So they can't really speak for them or know how they feel. Mm-hmm. And that's a big issue. Yeah. I mean, they can obviously. Here's the issue. We're stuck, it seems like, between these two parties. And obviously they're not even two separate parties. They're the same thing, just with a different mask. Yeah. They're run by these companies. And we're in a pickle right now because they're the ones that are in charge, and we need to actually get in charge.
Right.
Not we, I mean the people.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't mean Mark Twain has a quote where he says, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. And I thought that was interesting. Because like how much of our say is actually impacting the way everything is set up.
Like how much.
And I don't know. It could be everything, but
yeah, I agree. I feel like much of our vote and of our say isn't really accounted for as much as it is advertised as it is counted for. And I think one of the craziest things to me about the whole system is that with capitalism, I feel like something that most people don't really think about is that whoever has the most money is running the game, is running the show, is running the country, is running the world. It's not necessarily the leaders or the government entity that is being shown to you that is running things, because that's how capitalism works. Whoever has the most money has the most power. And the people that have the most money are not like you said, they cannot identify with the majority of us. And I think that is, I mean, it's so evident when you think about it like that, that is why most of us are so unhappy and the majority of the population isn't being taken care of, because the people that get to run the show, they have no idea what we go through and what it would take for us to all become on the same playing field. And I don't think that they want that. Like in one of my right, in one of my videos I was saying that the whole thing with capitalism is a hierarchy system. People have to be on the bottom for it to work. So that is not a system in which encompasses everybody and that is encouraging forward movement for all citizens and a happy, sustainable life. It is encouraging the complete opposite.
I agree. Yeah, it's Monopoly, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
And you know who's winning when you're playing Monopoly. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, that guy's winning because he has all the property and he's owning everything, and you're paying him all the money, all the rent. That's basically what we're doing. Yeah. You know, like. And we're losing. And it's funny, like, people will be like, all right, well, you can win. There's still going to be people losing. Yeah. And with me, that's not okay with me. I don't want anyone to lose. It just doesn't make sense. I do believe in oneness. I don't believe in many things, but I do believe that we are really all the same. And we all deserve just at least a life where it's equal enough. Right. At least we all have the basic necessities, like I was saying. Right. And it's gotten to a crazy point where capitalism needs poor people. Mm-hmm. We're the ones that sell all Starbucks employees, let's say. They probably sell like $50,000 worth of products a day. And they're getting paid $10 an hour or whatever it is. It's just crazy that the people who actually make it work are the poorest.
Right, are the least paid. The people that make the system run.
That's the craziest thing.
It is.
That always blew my mind.
I agree. And I think within this society, it's kind of incentivized to step on somebody to get where you want, or that it's fine if other people don't have as long as you have. It's more incentivized to be separate and to do your own thing and make sure you have, regardless of what anybody else is doing, feeling, or going through. And I think that's a really big part of us being very disconnected with each other, because I agree with you completely. I believe in oneness as well, and that we're all the same. And I think it's sometimes hard for people to really believe there are people out there that want equality in the same for everybody. That there are people that don't want to have power, or, not to not have power, because power is an amazing thing to have if you use it correctly. But there are people out there that don't want to have power over other people and how they live their lives and how they make their decisions. We can all have our own personal power and co-create a really beautiful world that works for everybody. It's completely possible. And I think a lot of this system keeps us very divided so that we don't feel like it's possible.
Yeah. And you know, here's the thing. I always think about this. A lot of people always conspiracize about how it's like, it's on purpose. You know, there's like, they're evil. They're just straight evil. They're doing that. And I think a lot of times we need to ask ourselves, like, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they could just be with the mindset of, oh, this is how I was taught to play the game. Profit. This isn't profitable for me. I'm not going to do that. You know, I don't know. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but it's interesting to think about how maybe they're not even thinking like that. Like, keep the poor down. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally possible that they're not, but it's just happening. Right. So it puts us in a weird situation, you know what I mean? We need to definitely take some action or something.
I agree, and I like what you said a little earlier about that there really is nobody to blame, because I think to your point of what you just said, it's so true. People operate on what they know how to do based on what they've been through and how they perceive life and how they move through life. Yeah. And so to blame is kind of to just deflect your power, because you can't do anything about what they're going to do or say or think or whatever. The only thing you can do is control what you're going to do with that information. And so I think that that's very true. Blame is subjective. To the people doing what you don't like doing, they think it's a good thing. And for you, it's not. And so I think a lot of the time we give our power away by focusing so much on what other people are doing. While sometimes we absolutely have to, because what they do impedes on what we're doing. But I think in a lot of ways we give our power away too much with trying to change other people rather than just being the change that we want to see in the world. So with your so you believe in oneness. I wanted to ask you, do you have a spiritual practice that you subscribe to, or religion or anything like that?
This is really interesting. I like, it sounds so strange. I just don't believe in anything really.
Okay.
That's the one thing I do believe in,
Gotcha.
is that everything is possible. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
We could die and it could be like you spawn in at another planet with a different face, you know, with a different skin color, like an alien type thing. You know what I mean? Like, it could be anything. There could be nothing. There could be heaven. There could be anything.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe that someone has the one answer. But I do believe in, I don't know what to call it. I guess it's spirituality, or like, I do believe in that things just are the way they are. I believe in like nature.
Ooh.
Like, do you know Taoism?
Yes.
So I like Taoism because it strictly just looks at the world and makes true facts about it. You know what I mean by that? Like, Taoism really speaks sense and speaks logic, and I do really enjoy that.
Right.
But I don't discredit religion. I love the fact that people can believe in something so hard that it really motivates them to be a good person or live the way they want to live. Or that's beautiful to me. That you could believe in something so much that it makes you feel a certain way.
Right.
That's so beautiful, and I think that's awesome. And spirituality is becoming very popular, and I hope it's not just like a trend.
Right.
You know what I mean by that? Like, sometimes I feel like things are just popular just because it hasn't been popular yet. So here it is. You know, here's the wave. But I hope people really take it seriously because it's a real thing. You know, you feel it. It's totally true.
I love that answer because I tend to, I think it's something called, I'm kind of blanking a little bit right now, but I believe it's called omnism. And it's the idea that there's truth in all religions and in all spiritual based practices. There isn't, because just like, I think it's kind of very similar to Taoism based off of what you were saying, is like, it's the idea that there's truth and validity in everybody's experience. And to act as though there's only one way to believe or do in anything is kind of, I think, a really big disservice to the infinite uniqueness that exists within the world and within all of us. So I think I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a really, I was really, I think, blessed with not really having anything forced on me at any point in my life, religion or spirituality wise. I was able to develop into my own ideas and thoughts on those kinds of things. And I think that has helped me a lot be very open-minded to what everybody else is feeling and respect what everyone else is feeling and thinking, even if it's not for me. So I love that.
Yeah, it's important that, well, even if you are forced on things, a lot of kids, especially during like, let's go 1990 to like 2010, I would think. Like, my parents like brought me to church, but they never like made me, you know what I mean? Like, they never really pushed it on me. And I would just kind of sit there and like watch everybody pray, and like, it really gave me like a good perspective in a way though. I was like, damn, like there's like 200 people here all singing these like hums and like, or hymns, whatever they're called, and like like kneeling down on the pew and praying to this thing that there's no evidence it even exists. So it's really insane. It's crazy to think about, really. Like, imagine coming here if you're an alien and you're like, all right, like, what do you guys believe in? And they're like, oh, there's like an invisible guy in the sky, and that we work for him. And then they're like,
we work for him.
What? Like, it's actually interesting that it's so universally understood in the world by humans that there's these gods. Like, it sounds like almost like a toddler made it up. You know what I mean? But we all believe in it, or like most of us believe in it, which is so interesting.
Yeah, I think humans...
I don't think it's foolish or anything. It's just interesting. I want to say that because I don't want to get it.
Now, I was picking up what you're putting down. I think it's very interesting that I think humans are kind of wired to want to understand where we came from, what's going on here. And so I think it's like innate to be like, okay, well, it's either this or it's this or it's this. And because it's kind of gives, because the idea that we're just out here, just like flying through space, winging it on this like big, huge mass ball is kind of really freaking crazy. And
we can definitely get into this. This is what I like talking about.
Oh, I'm glad. Me too. Because it's like, it's so beyond wild. Everything about being alive is wild. Everything about being human.
Doesn't make sense.
No. Like, I don't know if it's something we can physically, consciously comprehend in a human form. Like, because I get to a point where it just starts to like hurt my brain to think about it. The
Yeah.
possibility of what everything could be. So I think we're all trying to feel safe within being here and being alive, as crazy as it all is. So I would love to hear, you said you love to talk about this kind of stuff. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, oh boy. Yeah, you know what's funny? When I talk about this stuff, it actually feels like I'm using brain power. That's how I describe it. You know what I mean? Like, when you start really getting deeper and deeper and deeper into consciousness, you like, I feel my battery go from like 100 to like 9%. It's really like, it uses your brain to really think about it. But it just it's just crazy. That's what really started all this. I'm like looking around, I'm like, all right, what is this? What is going on here? We're on a planet. We're the only ones that are like conscious enough to, I don't know, really make a huge impact and communicate to each other. You know what I mean? Like, how did we take over this planet? How did we get this consciousness? The fact that we can't really remember things. And that's kind of like a blessing and a curse, to be honest. If we remembered everything, it'd be living hell in our heads all the time. Like, imagine you remembered every single time you drove down your street. You would be going crazy when you drive down your street every time. You'd be going crazy. Man, this could go so many ways. I'm thinking about memory now. Oh, man. It's just crazy. But this whole situation is ridiculous. And it's so interesting that we haven't found what's out there yet, or they haven't found us, which is so strange to think about. Because does that mean human life, or like what's intellectual life, whatever you want to call us, sentient beings, are that rare? It's either, you know, it scares me. It's either we're alone or we're not. And I don't know when we're going to find out.
Yeah, and it's like both are kind of...
But if we're alone...
I know, both are... I think that one for me is a little scarier. Like, I think with the infiniteness and the vastness of what we know to be the universe at this present time, I think my mom used to always say this when I was growing up. She was like, it's naive to think there are not other life forms out there. And I think that there's a point to that. Like, there's no way. Like, the infiniteness, I feel like there's no way there's nothing else out there. And I feel like if there isn't, that would scare me more than if there is.
Yeah. And, it's just crazy. This whole thing is just insane. The way that I am saying, my brain is thinking all these feelings, right? Or whatever thought is, we're thinking it. And you're understanding every word I'm saying, and you're speaking back to me. The fact we have language, how crazy is that? At some point in human history, people were thinking things and they couldn't express how they felt, like verbally, which is crazy to think.
Thing to think about.
But also, words can't describe things exactly.
Right.
You can't describe a feeling to the fullest.
Right.
I could describe it to you as much as I can, but you can only feel it in the way you feel it, not how I feel.
Right.
So I wonder if we ever get to a point, maybe in technology or some form of consciousness or something, where we can develop maybe like, I don't even know if you would call it language, but a way where we can translate feeling. Because that would be crazy. Like if I touch you or something and you like feel that. Oof. Are you like a Marvel fan?
Very huge Marvel fan.
Whatever her name is. The girl with the things. The alien girl.
Oh! Look.
What's her name?
What is her name? Oh.
Wow, the Marvel fans are going to be
I know, I'm like huge Marvel fan, but I actually don't know her name. But from Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
Well, her name. Yeah, from Guardians of the Galaxy, the alien, where she touches people and they feel like that shit. That would be, that'd be crazy. That'd be powerful. But,
yeah. Okay. I think it's really crazy how, like you were saying, how humans, like being the perceivably most conscious beings on this planet. Because one of the things is that while every other species has their own form of language or communication, we can't necessarily cross that boundary of communicating with them. I do believe in that there are people that can really connect and communicate with animals on that level and really kind of feel what they're feeling and kind of translate, but never exactly like you just said, because we are these separate entities in this time and space. And I think that that's really crazy that we have this power to affect everyone and everything in a way no other living being does, just in a morality sense. Because of course, every other living being, like, we need bees or we would die, and things like that. Like, we need these different ecosystems and these different animals and insects to continue on in the way that we're continuing on. But no other species could, like, take us over, or maybe they could, but they haven't.
Maybe they could.
Maybe they could, but they have not yet.
Yeah.
So it's crazy the power we have because of the level of consciousness that we have and what we do with it. And I think that it's such a huge responsibility that I don't know if we fully comprehend or understand how to use.
It's weird that I don't know why either, but we in a way are, like, I always say this, people take it a little too extreme, but I think it's fine. We're gods. We're gods on this earth, basically. We think of things and we create them. And yes, the earth is in control totally, because it's going to wipe us out if we, harm it too much. It's going to make it impossible for us to live here. But, like, we really do run the show here, and it comes with great power comes great responsibility. Like, and I feel that it's almost like it's like a test. I actually thought of this the other day. I'm like, that's why people think it's a test with religion, I think, because what a weird situation we're in, where we get the choice. We get the choice to do what we want with this world.
Right.
And right now, I think we're failing. I don't know. Or at least we're headed towards it.
No, I agree with you.
It's weird we get that choice.
Yeah, we're actually so dependent on nature, and we take that for granted. We take advantage of it rather than learning how to coexist and have a very true symbiotic relationship. And I think that's one of the things that I envy the most about past civilizations and the way that they lived. And just the stories you hear, like from Native Americans and whatnot, right? Like the way that they were so in tune with the earth and so appreciative of it. Have you ever seen the movie Avatar? Yeah, like not the like anime one, the like
the movie.
Yeah, the movie one. Yeah. And so
I got you.
So I think that is so beautiful, the way that they honored and treated the land as sacred, because they understood that it gives them their life. And I think the fact that we've become so disconnected from that is a huge indicator that we are failing, like you said, at least failing to really understand the intricateness between us and the world around us. And I heard you said earlier that the way that we exist is kind of very primitive, and I couldn't agree with that more. I think we've kind of, in so many ways, like taken so many step backs. I think sometimes we think because we're moving forward, or perceivingly we're moving forward in time, that we think that we are more advanced or the best society or civilization has ever been. And I just don't think that. I think that there's so many indicators that what they were doing before us is so much more in alignment with what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I have been, oh my God, you got to read this book. I've been reading this book called Civilized to Death.
Ooh.
And it's Civilized to Death, The Cost of Progress.
I'm writing it down.
It's by Christopher Ryan. It is so incredible. It has opened my eyes up to things I've never even knew was possible. He talks about how before civilization, so hunter-gatherer societies, foragings, they're called foragers, they lived, and he puts out, you got to read it. It's like insane. It makes so much sense. The fact that we think that because we're progressing because of civilization, it's getting better. But we fail to realize that it was actually fine to begin with when we didn't have civilization. It actually, it's almost, I don't want to say, the way we perceive the past, we always see, like, they were described as savages, right? Like, when we think of past, a lot of people automatically jump to, oh, they had short lifespans and they were savages. They killed each other. They would destroy their villages. And it really, did that happen? Yeah, but not as much as you think it did. It's almost, it's not racist. That's not the word. It's, you know what I mean? Like, they're assuming that because they were, because they were so primitive that it was, they must have been killing each other, and they didn't have knowledge, so they didn't have progress or technology, so they were definitely just savages. And they really weren't. They actually had, in the book, he talks about how they had three things in common throughout every every society, every hunter-gatherer like community. And they were living in packs of about like 150 or less, where there was fierce egalitarianism. I think it's called egalitarianism. It's a huge word, which means like fierce belief in self-governing, and everyone has like, you respect everybody's own thing, and they're like very fierce in equalism. Right. Everyone's very equal, has the same opportunities, have the same resources, and they also had major trust in each other. They have trust in their neighbor that when in time of need, they would share with them because they shared with their neighbor when they needed it. You know what I mean? It was that trust that society had, and their whole societies were based off of respect and trust and intelligence. Like that's how people rose to power in their societies, not through, kinship, if you were related to the king or whatever, not through like, corrupt systems. It was through respect. Yeah. Like, which is so cool. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you know when you meet a real leader in person. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, you ever feel that energy of someone where you're like, damn, I just respect you. Yeah. You're just in the presence and you're like, wow, I admire you. And in those societies, those people who were admired the most would lead the people, not because they wanted to, but because they were chosen. Right. Which is so
That's very, very powerful.
But you should really read that book. It's amazing.
I wrote it down.
And I'm only like 50 pages in. And it's amazing.
I love that. Awesome. I love that. I have, I'm going to give you a book recommendation too, since we're talking about it. There's this book called The Synchronicity Code, and it's very, very interesting. It has like a million different subjects within it, but one of the main things is like talking about how history is repeating itself, the cyclic history of how we seem to be continuing to repeat ourselves over and over again with the things we're doing because we're not learning from history and why that is. So it's very interesting. So you should read that.
I like that.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And also, like a funny line I actually learned of recently was history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
I like that.
Because it's never the same, but it's basically the same ending.
Right.
Really cool.
And it's so interesting because to a point that you said a little bit ago, how we really are because I knew exactly what you meant when you were saying we're like gods here, and how some people kind of take that very literally, because I think of what we were talking about, that people want to feel safe in whatever this is. Sometimes it can injure their viewpoints of the world in a greater power if you call yourself a greater power. But I completely...
People get sensitive.
Yeah, but I completely understand what you mean. We are creating everything that's around us. Yeah. We can literally think of something and bring it into being. That is crazy. And
what animal has that power?
Yeah.
Basically none. Little to none. Which is, it's crazy that we... let me throw this at you. I do believe, there's two things I want to say. I believe that every animal has like a superpower. And ours is consciousness.
Ooh.
But I think we have, how like Superman is basically the best. He has like everything. Yeah. That's what I kind of think of. Like, I think we have the best superpower. But with that superpower, like I said, is incredible responsibility. Mm-hmm. Now we are responsible for these things that we're doing to the planet and to animals, and because they can't really control it. So like we are responsible for that. So we need to control our superpower. Right. And it can get out of control, just like any superhero does. Sometimes they become villains, and sometimes they become heroes.
I like that analogy.
What we do, it's what we do with our power that defines us. It's not what the power is. So
very true.
With that, so every animal has a superpower, because I love observing my cats. I just love watching them because they're so damn smart and like aware, and just, it's incredible. And if you really watch every animal, they all have such specific and incredibly unique abilities. Right. And that's that might be the coolest thing about Earth. But let's get even more specific. When we get to humans, I think every human has like their own superpower.
Ooh, I agree. For sure.
And like you were saying, with people can really communicate with animals, that's a superpower. Sure. I can't do that. Sure. I think like someone I know really feels things heavily, like can feel all their senses very strong. Like they smell strong. They feel like emotions very strong. And I bet there's people, you know, like there's different types of powers out there. I think mine is thought. Like, I think we all just have different
I
powers,
agree.
and you have to find yours.
100%.
And sometimes it's by accident or it's by instinct. And we really need to like just utilize them.
I agree. And I think us not utilizing them is one of my biggest issues within society, because I feel like we're kind of conditioned not to. We're put into these boxes from a very early age of what's successful and what's not, and how we're supposed to be operating based on somebody else's idea of how we're supposed to be operating. We literally live in the likeness of what somebody else thinks and what somebody else thought way back when. We literally just subscribe to somebody else's idea of reality and live it. And it's crazy because we all have the power to co-create. And it's like we're just letting a certain group of people really create, and we're just kind of like letting them do it rather than creating ourselves as well.
Yeah. I always think about, like, imagine what we can really
I know. Like, it's actually crazy.
One day. I mean, we won't be alive to see
You
it
don't
probably,
think?
but I don't know. I don't know. I'm a big believer in like time. It takes a long time to do anything. Yeah. But I think this is a bold prediction, but I think in this lifetime, in our lifetime, how old are you?
24.
Okay, I'm 21.
Ooh, okay.
I think in this lifetime, in our lifetime, if we both make it to, let's say, 70, we will see some form of change in the system, or like rebellion, I think. Because, first of all, we're, like, if you've seen the predictions of what the world's going to be like in 2050, granted, I don't know if these predictions are correct, but
a lot of ideas out
it looks awful. It looks like you're going to have to wear, like, a oxygen mask to go outside.
If things keep going how they're going, I absolutely believe that'll be a reality, unfortunately.
And I think at one point, we're going to hit a breaking point. I just think, and it's, when I say a revolution, I don't think it's going to be, it could be physical. It probably will end physical, possibly. I don't know. But it's more of a mental revolution. Right. It's more of a change in thought. It's not, I'm actually going to post a video later about this, but so religion.
Oh, we're getting an exclusive.
Yes. Well, yeah, this is, yeah. So, you know how the church was in power of society, like throughout for a long time, for about 1,000 years almost, probably even more. They were starting wars, running society, hierarchies, all that stuff through religion, or through the church. I don't want to blame religion, because it's not religion. It's what we did to set up the power of it. Like, the church is really what did it. And a lot of people, for 1,000 years, we stuck with the church because we thought it was our only way to get a human right, which is to worship. I think, it's a human right to worship, right? Whatever you want to do, right? Religion is a human right. Everyone should be able to do it and believe in whatever they want to believe in. But we didn't realize that. We thought we needed something that was created, and the only way to get that right was to go through the church. So we would conform society however we had to just to get that human right. Do you think, are we at that point with money? Do we use money? Did we invent money to get human rights? Food, water, shelter.
Yeah.
And we think we need the money to get the food, water, and shelter. But at some point, will we be like, wait, I don't need the money.
Right.
It's here for free. Wait, I didn't need to go to church to talk to my God. I talked to it at home. You see what I'm talking about? Like,
I love that point. I love that point, because I think the basis of what we're going for in all of these aspects that you just mentioned are, we want freedom. We want the freedom to do, be, think, whatever we want. And the funny thing is the example of a church or money, those things are conduits to freedom. It's like they're placed in the middle of your path. And it's like you're over here, they're here, and what you want is over here. And they make you jump this hoop of whatever they want you to do to get to where you want to go. And it's crazy, because it's like you don't have to use any of those conduits at all. Somebody else has placed that idea there, that blockade there, that conduit there. And it's completely unnecessary. And it encourages us to, I think, in a lot of ways, behave in ways and do things that we wouldn't do in order to get what we want, because we think we have to do it in a certain way.
It's unnatural.
Very.
It's an invention. Yes. It doesn't exist. It's an idea that we created.
And
So
no,
yeah,
you
go
please
ahead.
go.
Oh, I didn't know where I was going
Okay.
really. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking about when you were talking about like, are we at that point with money where things would really start to change? And I was thinking like, I wonder what it would really take for a mass amount of people to really want to change things, because there has to be some kind of Achilles heel
Yeah.
here to where most people would be completely over the system or outraged with the system or something of that nature. I wonder what that would be.
Yeah, we might
I
see
know,
it.
and I
I don't
hope
know.
that we do. I hope that because
I kind of hope we do.
really, you hope we don't.
Yeah, I mean, no, I said hope
Oh,
we do.
okay.
I kind of hope we do. I want to
I
see it.
agree. I think. Well, I I think for me, it's something that I would love to be a part of, and I think that I already am in my own way, and I think you already are in your own way as well. It's something that I know that we could be living in a way that benefits everybody. And while I don't know the avenues to get there at this present time, I know that it's possible. Like you said, everything is possible. Every and anything is absolutely possible. So I want to be open minded to what we could do and how we could change things. And I really wonder what could really kickstart. That's something I kind of think about is what what would really upset most people enough to really want to change things, because there's so many
And
things.
it sucks. Yeah, it sucks to say, but I think it's going to be mass struggle. Honestly,
Mm,
that's what creates the most desperate
right.
times. Desperate measures. Desperate times call for desperate
Yeah.
measures. I think there's going to be a point where we just can't take it anymore.
Hmm.
Just can't take it. And like you said that so well. It's just it's like an instinct, right? To be like, I just think we could do better.
Hmm.
I don't know, and I don't know if that's us like mentally evolving.
Mm,
Everybody always thinks evolution is physical.
right.
I think it's mental
Yeah.
actually, and I think at some point it's like I call it the Great Awakening, almost like as our second awakening, because actually this is ties into the whole religion thing. When they realized that they didn't need the church anymore to go to to talk to their
Right.
religion, they called it the Great Awakening.
Oh, okay.
Are we having our own Great Awakening from money
Right.
at some point? Or is it starting right now? Just us talking about this is starting it.
Right.
If you think about it, we're throwing out these ideas, and maybe one person that watches it has an idea and makes a mass
Right.
change. It takes one thing.
Right.
That's why I always say, people are like, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" I'm like, I'm just spreading
Right. I'm doing
awareness.
something about it right
That's
now.
all. I'm just planting the
Right.
seed. That's all I'm
Oh,
doing.
I love that. You
And
never can underestimate the power of planting a seed, because, like you said, you never know
yeah,
what's going to resonate with somebody and completely take off. And I think,
we're one great idea away.
yeah, completely. And it's crazy, the idea that we have of what's civilized and what's not. Like, I love that idea of the Great Awakening. I think we're having a Great Awakening on so many levels, to the system, to having other people lead and be in charge of us, to being so disconnected with nature and everything around us. We have this idea of what civility is, and I think when we actually look at the world, we're so uncivilized. We kill each other over resources that everybody needs, that resources that are inherent to everybody, that are free. We do so many things that make zero sense. I don't know how civilized
Yeah.
that is.
It's not. That's why in that book, actually, the guy is saying that civilization itself has turned us into these monsters, basically. The fact that it's not actually natural to do these
Right.
things. It's just because we put ourselves. Civilization is not natural.
Right.
Habitats and ecosystems are
Mhm.
natural. We locked ourselves away in these little places. Now it's the whole earth,
Right.
basically. But we're away from nature, and it's changed
Mhm.
us drastically. And I think it really blows my mind, the fact that we literally spend money on on military to kill each other.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
like, that's got to be at some point. I hope at some point in like the far future,
Mhm.
let's say 22. Oh, this is so weird to even say 22, 21. Let's say they're like, yo, they used to kill people back in the day over like land and
Right.
shit. Like, how crazy is that? Like, the idea of even killing each other for anything is just It's just so
Yeah,
unnecessary.
it's such a primitive way to behave.
Barbaric.
Barbaric, that's the
Yeah.
exact word I was thinking. That's so funny.
Yeah.
It is. And like one of the things that blows my mind the most about society is war. And because it's like I can't understand how we've come to it. Well, I can, but it's so crazy to me how we've come to a point where the people we have chosen or the people that do lead us can't compromise one another. So they reduce themselves and reduce their people to fighting and possibly killing themselves for it. Because something I've always thought about is, you know how many less casualties there would be if 2 countries, 3 countries, 4 countries, whatever, are going to war, if those 4 leaders just fought each other rather than ensuing like millions
Yeah.
of their population and to do it for them. It's such a weird thing. It's really your fight. I'm not really having a say in it. You guys are talking to each other and communicating and deciding that you can't be responsible enough to share amongst everybody and to compromise, so we are suffering for it. That is so beyond crazy.
We're just like they use people like they're pawns just to fight their own war. It just you know what's crazy about history is that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Everything that we did just doesn't make sense. And you almost think like, were they just not thinking at all? They just not think. This is, you know, I'm starting to think that the internet has given us like perspective. I guess social media or the internet has given us like an out of ourself perspective, I feel like. Because I try to imagine myself, like my life without, like, imagine your life without the internet.
Right.
Wouldn't you feel like you're so, like, in it?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it'd be harder to, like, speak outside of the box. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel that way,
I know
at
what you
least.
mean, yeah.
And maybe because, like, they all felt like they were in a movie, it seems like. You know what I mean? Like, it's so dramatic. The way they were living was so dramatic. Like, and I don't know if it's internet that's helping us become so aware of the fact that we're all the same.
Yeah.
And we all have things in common.
Yeah, because we have this exposure to the rest of the world in a way that we didn't previously. Like I was talking to my grandma a little while ago, and I told her that something I kind of envy about her generation is you didn't have so much information bombarding you. You didn't have so many people to compare yourself to, so many just different, like now we get real-time information about every war that's going on. Well, if it's being covered or whatever, but not everything that's important we get told about. But we just have so much information to so much fear, to so much happiness, to so much information all the time that it's really like a double-edged sword for me. Like it's so amazing,
Absolutely.
right, to be exposed to all of these things, but it's also very overwhelming. And I think previously they had it a lot simpler in a lot of ways, but they also didn't have as much power to communize with other people that feel the way that they do. I don't even know if that's a word, but I just made it one if it's not.
It is now. All words
yeah,
are made up.
Right. So I think we have so much power in it, but it's also like you used to only know like a few hundred people in your life or maybe a few thousand people. Now you have access to millions of people. And it's just very, very wild how quickly that has really transformed I think the way that we think, but not really the way that we behave, because we're still very, yes, in the way that we behave, but what I mean by that is we still aren't really fighting for the change that we really want to see in a way that actually makes the change. Like we are standing up for things like we kind of always have, but it's still what we want. The majority of people in a lot of ways is still not coming to be. And I think that that's very, very interesting. And I think it's something that you said, that history doesn't really make sense. I think there are things that we just don't know. I think there are a lot of things that are left out.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I don't think it's any secret, and I hope it's not to anybody. I hope most people know this, that a lot of countries formulate and share and expose their citizens to the history that is in the likeness of that country, not necessarily the truth of everything that has happened. And that's also one of my other biggest issues with society. It's like they're trying to encourage this blind sense of patriotism rather than giving you all of the information to choose for yourself. It's very, very weird for me.
Right.
I don't like that at all. And it prohibits us a lot from, I think, really making the change we want, because I don't know if we have all the pieces to the puzzle to really know where we're going, because we don't know exactly where we've been. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. No, yeah, it's very important. I wish we knew exactly where we've been, because then it would help so much. And they say history is written by the victors, and then the losers write the worst things about the people who beat them.
Yeah.
So who do we believe? Like it's very confusing. And oh man, there in the book I was talking about, they had a thing about colonization, and when Columbus came over, he was talking about how incredibly and how it's so nice the like foraging societies were, how they were willing to give a stranger anything.
Yeah.
And then it takes the darkest twist, and then he says what fine servants they would make.
Why did I hear that the other day?
Which is crazy.
That's crazy.
It's just so crazy.
It is.
Yeah, like he was like, these people are incredible. They're so amazing. They're so nice. Oh, they'd be great.
Right.
servants.
Yeah.
Like what?
I don't know where I was talking about this or where I heard this the other day, but it was about how when Christopher Columbus came here, and when he met with the Native Americans, how at first how the Native Americans were so welcoming. They were so willing to share the information, how they do certain things, and how he just like blindsided the hell out of them with all of this. You know what I mean? With really deciding to take over rather than to like share and to coexist. And I think that that's really crazy that it can take one person or a group of people or an idea of we could have power over these people to really change how everything is running.
Yeah, I hope this makes sense, because I always try to display this, but I don't know if it makes sense. The thing that I hate about bad people or like evil acts and good versus evil, right? Good, let's say the Native Americans were good, right? They were giving away, they were being nice, they were giving all their information, they were helping. You can't be so good. It's so hard to describe. So death, when you're a bad person, you can kill, and death is permanent, right? So, but when you're a good person, you can't, you know what? You can't like
bring
kill someone in a good way. You know what? Yeah, no, like you don't, because you're better to kill, but like the fact that death can be so permanent and bad people can kill good people, and then there is no way for good people to win unless they somehow kill the bad person inside the bad person. Does that make sense? Like good people somehow have to convince the bad people to not be
without
bad.
like stooping to their level.
Yes, that's the issue. That's the hardest thing, because if we did have let's say in current day, if we had a revolution and it was of high conscious society, we would know that killing is wrong and we shouldn't do it. But the people that are oppressing us will kill us. But you know what I mean? It's so, I don't know if that made sense.
No, it absolutely does.
One day I'll figure out a perfect way to say it. Not a perfect way, but a better way.
Your point definitely came across.
But it's so hard because death is so permanent, but good people can't permanently take over a bad person without killing them. You know?
Killing at least some part of them. I know exactly what you're saying. And I think that's one of the reasons we don't really have a revolution like we would maybe like to see at this current time. Because there's many little revolutions going around for certain things, for certain topics, right? But it's like, I think that idea is what stops people the most. They're like, well, how would we potentially take over things and change the government if it ever got to that level? Like, it's in these founding documents that they can put military force against us if the people start to rise up, if they start to want to change things. But it's also in the founding documents that the people have the right to do those things. That is our duty to overthrow, to change, to revolutionize if the government is not serving the people in the way that they say that they are, or the way that they're supposed to be. And I think that's what really stops people, is because like we saw with Black Lives Matter protests last year or the year before, 2020, this pandemic has really fucked up my sense of time. It's ruined time. I know, I'm like, wait, was that last year or the year before? But there were times where the National Guard came in and they were attacking and throwing or shooting rubber bullets at people and things like that, for exercising their right to freedom of speech, to freedom of assembly, to freedom of protest. And it's like, it's very evident that the people in power like to keep it this way to a certain extent, and that when that is threatened, they will use force. And so I know exactly what you mean. It's like the people that have the power kind of have their power by infringing on the rights of other people. How do you change that when you're not willing to infringe on other people's rights? Exactly. I completely get that.
It's like, it's really fucking
and it really is kind of a conundrum. Like, how do we do that? How do we, but something that you said too about, when you said that you were in church and you saw everybody like praying, I think things like that are very powerful. Mass amount of people praying for a certain thing. You know what I mean? Everybody might have had their own idea in mind and their own specific needs or whatever the case may be they were praying about, but everybody was collectively praying to their idea of God. And I think that is very, very powerful. Like I read something once where it was like, thousands of people meditated, and it like raised the energy and vibration of the planet in that area. Like I'm a huge believer in that everything is energy, and that can be manipulated for the betterment or for the detriment. Like we literally turn physical thought into matter, into physical being. And so it's really crazy, the power of thought, the power of action, and when it is organized. And so I think that there might be something there. I think that there might be an energy that is powerful enough that contains love and goodness that may be able to overtake bad negative energy. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It just, I wonder where, like, at what level does it get to that? You know, what level of it is like, okay, you know what, I'm going to change the way I do things. And they must be right. But I want to say two things. Something about community is like, you can't even describe the feeling, right? Like when you're in a crowd and they're all like screaming a song at the, you know, like when you chant a song together at a, like say a football game or anything, that feeling is just like awesome. I don't know, something about camaraderie. And like, did you see the new Spider-Man? Yes. Like, did your crowd probably went crazy, right? Isn't that like, that feeling is like pure energy. Like, I don't know why that feeling of a ton of people together just doing something for like out of pure joy, you know what I mean? Or out of pure, like, I don't know, we're all in this together type feeling. The camaraderie of it is just like, I live for that feeling. That feeling is amazing. I completely agree. And it's so powerful. It is. And so like, imagine what we can do
with that power if we learned how to organize and direct it properly. Because like you said, you can feel it. So it's just like there are certain things that you can't necessarily quantify, like love or whatever the case may be. Like you can't quantify it, but you feel it, so you know it's real. And I think that sense of community and that camaraderie and what we could do with that, it is such a real possibility that I don't know if we've quite tapped into yet. The power of what that could really mean for collective amount of people to set an intention and to feel that together. And I think that that's something that could really change what they say. And I think a lot of people, because I don't know if it's that negativity is necessarily incentivized in this society, but it's like the way that things are and how miserable people are because of the system. It's like, it's kind of the go-to. I feel like most people expect people to be bad or to be negative rather than to be good and honest. And I think that if we started to change that narrative around really understanding each other, no matter how different we may be, I think that could really change things. Because like you said, when you're blaming people, you're really just, what does that do? It doesn't really do anything.
It doesn't change anything.
If you're just,
nothing changes.
If you're just shaming somebody for what they believe rather than trying to understand it, then you're not going to move anywhere. But if you could come to a conclusion of trying to understand and broaden your perspective based off of their differing perspective, it gives you a bigger overall idea of the whole picture. That could change everything.
Yes. Perspective is that's one thing that is huge. That I think it's the most understated thing there is I have two things I want to say. Let's do this one first. A trick I use is imagining everybody as if they are like a character in a TV show or a book or a movie. When you see it like that, for some reason, it makes it so much easier to get in their shoes. You know what I mean? I don't know why, but for me, it does the trick. Like I'm thinking when I meet someone new, I'm trying to figure out, okay, that's what their life is like. Okay, I could see how that's terrible. You know, I could see the way they became who they were, whether it's a good thing or a bad
Right.
thing. It's really interesting to put yourself in a shoe the same way as when you watch a movie. You know a character, you could love a side character and you can know everything about them and you understand why they do what they do. And that's why when you laugh when they say something and you're like, oh, that's so Ronald
Yeah.
Weasley of him. You know what I mean? Like when Ron makes a joke, you're like, oh, of course Ron made that joke. I do that in real life too. Like at coworkers, I'll be like, oh, of course that guy said that. That's hilarious because that's his character.
Right.
But yeah, that insight has changed my life drastically.
I think that's a great way to look at it.
Second thing. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
go?
please.
All right. So before, when we were saying we don't know the power of like people following an idea together in a good way, we've definitely seen the impact of people following an idea together in a bad way. And we've seen the impact it's had. And like I said, just bad, the dangers of evil, of whatever you want to call evil, but like bad things like Hitler, he convinced millions of people to do what he wanted, like what he wanted to do.
Right.
I bet they felt great. I bet people who were following him were like, oh my God, this camaraderie, we're all together in this, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. And it could be dangerous. It could be really, really, really dangerous.
Absolutely.
Like, because we also have to realize during a war, both sides think they're completely right. No matter who it is, both sides, if they're fighting for it, they really do believe in their cause, which is scary to think because then who's right or wrong?
Right.
You know, like, I don't know. It's
100%.
tough. It's tough. And we got to be dangerous of those communal ideas because sometimes they are not.
Yeah. When you were talking, Hitler was the first person I thought of too. And that movement, because it's such a, it's such a basis of evidence that you can get people to believe in anything if you are passionate enough about it and if you make the right moves to put yourself in a position to speak on it. Because it's just the craziest thing. It could have been like he was just a person. Like I think sometimes people like the idea of being a celebrity or being famous or being a leader or whatever the case may be, it's like this idea that they are on this pedestal that you couldn't attain, that they are so smart or they have this information you don't have. And it's just not the truth. They were a regular person with their own ideas and they believed in them enough and believed in their self enough to put themselves on a pedestal to become the leader of something and to encourage millions of people to get into it. Oh, sorry, my alarm's going off. But it's really crazy that one person can create that mass amount of change. And that's, I think, it's such a beautiful thing and a scary thing because it's like one person could imagine what somebody opposite of Hitler could have done. You know what I mean? With those millions of people and following behind him. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to think about it like that. And I think that the reason that sometimes perceivingly evil or bad things continue on as opposed to good things is because that fear behind that is kind of pushed with it. Like Hitler, the propaganda that they used back then regarding Jewish people and the type of propaganda and the things that they put in the newspapers and the way that they conditioned the idea of what Jewish people were and how they were negative, et cetera, et cetera. They completely made up this basis that wasn't actually necessarily true in order to sell their idea. And they did it repetitively enough and enough to condition these people into believing and following it. And that's one of the craziest things about the human mind is how it can be swayed and conditioned and brainwashed in a lot of ways to follow certain ideas.
Yeah, it's
scary.
fear is a big thing. You know, like it can really change. It can change people so much because, you know, a lot of people were reading those propagandas and they were like, oh, maybe that's true. That scares me. So you know what? I'm gonna band together, and that's called fear mongering, right? Like when you're trying to. And it's so interesting because some people say I'm doing that with my videos, and I don't mean to do that. I just I'm just telling you how I see the world. You know what I mean? And if that makes you fear, I mean, maybe we should be fearing, you know, like to actually put a spark under our ass. I've actually thought about how for some reason, bad people are really good at getting things done in the physical. You know what I mean? It's one thing that, because I think it's easier to sell fear than it is to sell hope.
Especially in this current societal climate. That's what's more,
for sure, yeah. Because that's, with everything with the COVID and shit, like, it's so easy to sell fear, and it's so seldom do we see hope.
Right.
And it's just, it's interesting how fear actually contaminates the mind more than hope does sometimes. But I think hope might be a stronger feeling than fear when it's at its full potential.
I agree. Yeah. And it's wild. Like, one of the things that kind of started all of this off for me really questioning things and wondering why we did things the way we do. Like, I always had inclinations when I was younger. Like, I remember when Bush was running for president, my mom took us to vote with her. And I remember asking her, like, you're voting for one person to like, be in charge of everybody? Like, it was just a weird concept to me. So I've always kind of been like, I don't really get life. I've always been interested. But one of the biggest things to me that really set all this off is when I started to understand how the brain conditions itself and how it creates who we are. It's so easy to be programmed by outside information and not even be aware of it. And that's one of the scariest things that I don't think most people are aware of. And it doesn't even have to be scary, because it's actually really powerful once you understand it. If you understand how you can be programmed, you can program yourself against being programmed by anybody else. And I think that's one of the biggest disservices that we don't learn, because especially with the school system that we have, like, we're kind of taught that we are learning everything important that we need to know to live this life. And it's just not the truth. Some of the most important things are left out. And I think, in a huge way, it's to perpetuate and continue the system in the way that it is. But understanding how your brain, because we all running on a program. You're Mark Taylor, I'm Sierra Cruz. These are our programs that have been created by a summation of who we are and our beliefs and our perceptions based on our past. And so we all have a program, and we're all being programmed all the time, subliminally, directly, mentally, physically, emotionally. And it's like, once you understand how your body and your physiology creates all of that, it really helps you understand how most people have been conditioned, like people that were following Hitler. They were just conditioned and propagandized over a period of time to where they started to think like this man, because he had control over their media outlets, over their newspapers, over everything. And so it's really crazy how, like you said, the power of the mind. And I think one of the biggest things moving forward is us really understanding how to harness that power for ourselves rather than letting other people take control of that. Yeah.
Yeah, the school system really should just teach us about us first. We need to understand ourselves, like, as much as we can before we learn any. At the age of, like, in 5th grade, by 5th grade, we, like, learn about the Boston Tea Party. Why do we need to know that? We're like 13 years old. We learn like interesting things at a young age, and then by the time we're like teenagers, it's like not that more interesting anymore, really, because like we got other things we're thinking about. And I just feel like we should maybe, for those first 6 grades or whatever, we should really just start like teaching people about themselves and consciousness and feelings, and you know what I mean? Like, most people don't know how to control their minds, their attitudes. They don't know this because we're not taught this. And although a lot of people are like, well, it's not their job to teach it. Why not?
Because
why not? I mean, we don't need to learn these. Why do I know, like, the solar system at the age of 5? Or not the age of 5. Sorry, 5th grade. I don't need to know that. Like, but if you told me later in life, I'd be like, wow, that's crazy. Every night I've been looking at the moon, like, obsessively. Like, every night I just look at it and I'm like, that's fucking crazy. That's just crazy. That thing's just sitting up there and it's out. I'm like, that's crazy. And it never did blow my mind in the past, but now I'm like starting to really understand like the insanity of the whole living situation because I'm looking at life in a more like different perspective way where, you know, I'm observing everything. And I taught myself to do that kind of like, I told myself to start observing more, and the school never taught me that.
And it's interesting how, like, how do I want to say it? It's interesting how, like, how we completely rely on our government entities to teach us everything. They have created this regulatory education system that's mandatory. You have to go to school. And so you create this mandatory system. So on one hand, they are forcing you into this, yet you don't think it's their responsibility to teach you everything that you need to know. Like, obviously, I don't know if they could teach us absolutely everything. That's probably pretty ambitious, because I think everybody is interested in different things. And like you said, I think everybody has their own superpowers and their own innate abilities that would lead them wherever they want to go. But it's like, how can you force us into this system that kind of hinders our emotional and mental growth in a lot of ways, because we're not taught about those things. You're putting us in these situations, in these scenarios where we do need to know this stuff, and not giving us those tools. Like, bullying starts at when? Like, even probably before you even go to school. But it puts you in an environment when you are around so many other people, and the opportunity to be bullied or to be hurt physically or mentally or emotionally, it's so capable of happening in that environment. And it's like, so how do you set up this environment like this and not give us the tools to really work and understand how to go through it, and how to, does that make sense? Am I making any sense? Okay.
It does.
Yeah. It's just, it's very interesting how we, even though we rely on a system for everything, once it starts to go wrong, we're like, why blame the system? Well, you know what I mean? It's interesting.
It's tricky. Yeah. It's so sticky. This whole situation we're in is fucking crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't know how we're going to get out of it. And it's like,
life's really wild.
The school system really isn't changing at all. It's been the same for about 100 years. And we're talking like prime years of someone's life, 12 years of a kid's life.
Right.
We're spent learning the same things over and over and over and over again. No classes on how to find yourself, how to treat relationships, how to set boundaries, how to learn about just, you know what I mean? Like all these things, the power of your mind, all these things. We're not taught any of these. We're taught geometry.
Right.
And meanwhile, I've never used the Pythagorean theorem in my life outside, and I never will. Like, and also I want to say, why can't kids find something they really like and pursue, and they know they really like it, and just pursue it straight out of the get-go? Like, say in 5th grade, I found that I really loved science and I wanted to be an astronaut. Why can't I just take astronaut, let's say, course, like the path to get to an astronaut, and however fast I complete like the classes, shouldn't be age limited. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if I get through these classes, I'm clearly smart enough and I'm learning the things that need to be learned. Learned
something.
Learned. And who's to say that at 15 years old, I can't go to the moon? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like we're limiting people so much
for no reason.
In the way that, okay, here are these 4 subjects, and learn them, and you're going to learn them over and over again, and it's going to be the same thing. Even if you don't even like them, you're going to have to get through them. You're going to have to show some sort of interest, and then you're going to get graded on them. And if you don't, even have interest in the class, you're going to have to at least put some effort to get good grades.
Right.
And then it's just like, it's just forcing you. It's more of this bullshit where like everybody goes to a lot of people go to jobs that they hate, but because they need the money, they go. And a lot of people got grades or went to school because they had to, and because they needed good grades to get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a cycle of a lot of bad stuff.
And it's like wild that like, because like you said, like they kind of just like put us all into, like, it should be specific to us. And I've made a video before that talked about, I've made a few, but I had a video on my YouTube where I was talking about the school system and why I think it's like detrimental to our authenticity of who we truly are. It puts us all in the same confines, has us all learn the same way when we don't all operate that way. And a lot of the comments I got were like, well, there's not enough teachers to teach every kid individually. But I think one of the main things that's interesting about society is back in the day, like your parents were able to enable a lot of that stuff because there wasn't this structure where they had to be working or had to be out of the home. Like a lot of parents don't really get to raise their children because they're so busy trying to provide for them. And that's so unbelievably backwards. Like if we had the opportunity to all do what we wanted to do and have the freedom to really be who we are, we would have the freedom to give our kids that freedom. We'd have the space to give our kids that freedom. And it could completely change the way that we operate and work things. Like the school system's a huge thing for me that I'm like passionate about bringing awareness to, because it just conditions us in so many different ways to believe so many different things about ourselves and about the outside world that just aren't either true or ideal or specific or relevant to us. And like, so for, like I always say, like I would never put my kids in this current public school climate whenever I have them. It would, yeah. And people are like, well, people have such a interesting idea about homeschooling, and obviously it depends on how you do it. But they're like, well, how will your kids get socialized? I'm not going to lock them away. Like, they're going to meet other people. You know what I mean? But, like, if I...
Especially with the internet.
Well, and it's like, if they want to... If we're learning about France, let's go to France and learn. Like, I'd want to do more hands-on stuff like that. Like, really expose them to the world. Expose them to finding themselves and being authentic rather than putting them in a classroom to be taught at all day, and even if that's not even the way that they learn. And so I think it needs a complete overhaul, like the system in general, but maybe it starts with the education system, because that's where they get us at age 5. We're so young. So maybe if we start really making changes there, that'll change the way that all these young people are thinking and how they think about themselves, and give them more of a sense of power that this world is theirs just as much as it's anybody else's, and that we can do what we want with it, and that we can share in that with other people.
Free thinkers. That's all we need. It's free thinkers.
Yeah.
And the school system really is just like a machine that cranks out the same product over and over again, basically. They put a nice creative, unique thing in, and out comes the same square box, you know? It just feels like that's what it is over and over again. And it just it can't be that way. It can't. We're all unique. Like I said, we all have our superpowers, and everyone should be at least personalized in that way. You gotta think also, like, before school systems, kids were learning about life through their parents. There wasn't this separation between, okay, like mom's gonna go to work, and kids don't know what work is. You have an idea, you know, like growing up, my parents were always like, okay, I'm at work. And I often like imagined what their work was, but you never truly knew what they were doing. And in like prior times before school systems, kids would be, you know, work in the field with their parents and really getting that life experience, that true, okay, this is what they're going to use in their life. Let's teach them right now. And that a lot of like foraging and hunter-gathering societies were so well-oiled, like they everything was so fluid because they were so certain in what they were doing. Oh, I wish I had my book on me, but this one chapter was talking about how when it rains, they laugh. When it doesn't rain, they laugh. When they hunt and they don't get any food, they laugh. When they hunt and they get a ton of food, they laugh. Because yes, they're going to experience hard times, but because of generations before them experiencing those hard times, they know exactly how to deal with them, and they'll get through with them. They're so comfortable because they've had years of experience, generations of experience of this. And they were taught this through their parents and generations down. You know what I mean? The knowledge just comes seeping down. And I think we're so uncomfortable in this world because we're so new to it. No one knows what's going on. No one knows what the fuck's going on. And because it's so new, you know, our parents they did not grow up in a world anything like our world is right now. They can't give us any advice. I mean, they could give us, you know, that old school advice, but there's no internet. There was no anything like this. So that's why it's so like scary and riskful, because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Really.
And there's so much of a disconnection from what's really important. Like, so many of us, like, if let's say the system did upend itself tomorrow and completely shut down, not just like a government shutdown like that happens all the time, but if they just stopped doing everything for us in the way that we do, how many of us would actually know how to hunt and get our own food? How many of us would know how to make our own medicine, build our own shelters? Like, the basic necessities of how to survive, most of us don't know. We are too dependent on somebody else telling us what we're supposed to know rather than really being in tune with that. And that's something that's very, very wild and scary a little bit, because it's like, the idea that at this time take care of myself if everything happened, completely take care of myself in all ways, like, it's terrifying. And that's the thing when people, because I get comments too, like you said before, where people say that some of your videos are fear mongering or whatever. It's like, I'm just expressing the truth from my perspective. And if that does scare you, like, it's not my intention. But some of the stuff that we go through and that is going on is scary. And I don't know how to sugarcoat that.
There's no way around it.
And
There's no way around it.
Right. So it's like,
and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Like, it is what it is. And it's like, because the only way to change anything is to be upfront and direct about it. And so it's like, it kind of is scary, a lot of the ways in which we've been conditioned to behave and think and live. And when you come to the realization that it's kind of completely opposite of true alignment with life and nature and with whatever, it can be a scary thing, because it's shifting your entire perspective on what you think life is, on what you think it should be. That's always going to be uncomfortable. That's always going to be a little scary.
Always. Change is not
right. And it never will feel completely comfortable, but that feeling of uncomfortability is like evidence that change is happening, that growth is occurring in some way. And I think that that's
so funny.
I think that's a great way to look at it, as opposed to like, oh God, like, I don't know what this is going to bring me.
Anytime, I always, I'm starting to like really realize this as I grow older. Anytime you feel nervous before you do something, you should embrace it. You actually like just stop and just smile, because you're like, wow, I'm actually doing something that I care about. Like, it's something that is pushing me to do something I haven't done before. Comfortability is great until it becomes uncomfortable. I always say that sometimes I'm so comfortable in my life that it's actually uncomfortable, because I hate the same thing over and over again. Like before we did this call, I was pretty nervous.
Me too.
And which is a good thing, because that means we're doing something that's pushing us. And after, we're going to look back and be like, oh, that was great. You know what I mean? The good thing I did that. Thank God I didn't just pursue with my Monday the same way I would every single other day. Something new. I'm always longing for that.
I completely agree. I told you previously, I think it was before we started the call, but I haven't done a podcast in a while. Like, you're my first one in like a minute, like 5 months or so. And it's because sometimes I get in these moments where I'm super confident about expressing and sharing my beliefs and opinions, and then I get in these other moments where I'm a little more it feels very scary and vulnerable to really put myself out there like this. So there are times where I kind of start and stop, and I really want to try to stop doing that and be more consistent. But I was telling myself before this call, I was like, do something that scares you every day. Do one thing that scares you every day. Somebody said that somewhere. Do one thing that scares you a little bit every day. And there's such wise words to live by, because like you said, like that nervous feeling is like, I feel like sometimes an indicator that you should just go for it. It means it matters to you in some way. You know what I mean? And that's a beautiful thing. It should matter. Things should matter to you and make you feel alive like that,
Exactly. When you're at that, to me, that's like the signal to jump. When you get that feeling, that's when you know, all right, I need to jump in. I need to jump in the water. I'm excited. I don't know what's going to happen. I need to do it, because that's what living is about. That's the whole experience.
Yeah. I think,
trying something.
Yeah. We've I think become too comfortable in being complacent. Like, we've just kind of, we tend to fear a lot of things outside of ourselves. So we kind of like put ourselves in this little bubble. And I think we get too comfortable there, because just growth can't occur there in your comfort zone where everything stays the same. You have to go outside of what you normally do.
I have an interesting thought I just thought of. I'm going to share it with you. Do you think, so we like seeing new things, right? That's like, everyone loves like seeing something they haven't seen before. And that's why I think the internet and social media is so popular, because you don't have to be in it. Like, you don't get nervous to scroll TikTok or like Twitter or something, you know what I mean? Because you're not in it, but like you're seeing new things. So it's really interesting to think that like, that's how we're kind of avoiding those feelings and not getting comfortable with being nervous. Because we're like, okay, this is something new, but I don't have to feel nervous with it, because it's not actually me.
Yeah,
absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in it. And sometimes, like, when I post a video, sometimes I'll get like a rush, right? Because it's like something new. It's like, oh my God, okay, let's see. It's like, I feel like maybe that's why social media sometimes I love social media, and then sometimes I think it's really harmful. But then sometimes I think it's incredibly helpful. It's a double-edged sword in that way. And I don't think, and I don't think it's better or worse. I think it just is. you know?
And that's why sometimes it's just like, do I want to be out here? Like sometimes I just don't want to be perceived by anybody. And then there are times where I'm like, I have so much to say though. So it's just, it really is like this constant like push pull between myself. I'm like, okay, I know that I could contribute something here. But so I just have to push past my fear to do it, but also in a way that reserves and saves my energy and doesn't push past any boundaries that I have. It's just really like a balancing act, I think. But social media in a lot of ways can be very harmful and scary, but also revolutionary. So I think most everything in life is double-edged swords. So you kind of just have to learn how to balance on it.
Things are good and bad, and that's just how they are.
So I wanted to ask you, so do you get nervous usually before you post, or does it depend?
No, not always. No, I don't know. I used to really, it's really so, I was like the most average basic kid in high school. Like, wanted to do all the cool things, wanted to be liked by people, you know, like really cared what everyone thought about me. And once you lose that, it changes your life like completely. But it never goes away, I feel like. Like, I'm getting more comfortable with it every single day. But sometimes I'm like, oh, wait, people are going to think I'm complaining, or, you know what I mean? Like, people are going to see me in a certain way, and I don't want to be seen like that. And then I really just remind myself, I'm going to die. We're all going to die. Like, I'm just fucking put it out there. What's going to happen if I do? You know, I don't want to live on a what if. Just fucking put it out. Just put it out. I love putting reality to my situations, because when you realize that this all ends for everybody, it doesn't really matter in a good way. Nothing matters in a good way. Like, put it out. If that's for anybody listening, or you, if you have anything you want to say and you're scared of what people are going to say, just put it out.
I couldn't agree with you more. For sure. Because it's like, regardless of who you are or what you say, there's always going to be somebody that disagrees with it and somebody that likes it. There's an avenue for everything. Like, oh my God, that you could literally make a podcast about anything, and there'd be at least one person in the world that's gonna like it and be interested in it, no matter what it is. And so it's like, I call it my bat signal. It's like, that's how I'm gonna find my people. It's just by being myself.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Just like putting myself out there. Like,
that's awesome.
Because I always used to feel kind of like, I don't know if anybody thinks like me. I don't know if anybody will get it. But the only way you're going to know is if you share the fact that you think that way. Like, I've had a few friends in my life where it's like, we could have been talking about this stuff the whole time. And like, neither one of us just like, we're too scared to like bring it up, or didn't know if the other person would think we're crazy or whatever. And so it's like, if you don't put yourself out there, you'll never really know. And so, wise words, very wise words. So I wanted to ask you as well, what is your main motivation for making content?
I guess just to spread awareness of thought. Like, I really just want to spread consciousness, honestly.
I love that, yeah.
I don't like, this might sound weird, but I just don't really see like I don't have many goals in my life. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people want like this house, this car, this family, this thing. Me, I guess at least in my age right now, I'm not sure of any of that really. But the one thing I really do want to do is make everybody aware of what's going on. I think consciousness is a power we haven't even realized the ability of. And like I said, it's our superpower, and we haven't even realized it yet, and we haven't even seen what it can do. And there's no limit to it. There's no limit to thought. That's what's so cool about thinking, and that's why I love philosophy, is that there's no ads, there's no commercials in your head, you have to pay to have these thoughts, there's no boundaries. You can think as much as you want for as long as you want, and there's no one to tell you not. And you're the only maybe you're the only voice in your head, but you know what I mean? No one's commenting and calling you an idiot or doing anything. It's actually really nice in your head. Once you realize that, once you get rid of all the fear and all that stuff, and it's just you, my advice is to become best friends with yourself. That is so important, because you're stuck with this motherfucker 24/7
forever
for the rest of your life. So you better get comfy, and you better start appreciating yourself. It sounds crazy, but in my head, there's almost two people. There's like the thinker, where I think these thoughts, and then there's the person that's reflecting on those thoughts and thinking about the thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, who's it called? Aristotle said that it's a mark of I'm not calling myself intelligent, but it's the mark of an intelligent mind. No. It's the mark of an intelligent mind to think of something but not believe in it. You know what I mean? Like, you could just think something and you don't have to necessarily believe in it. Just entertain the idea. Just think of it. Doesn't mean you have to believe in it, follow it, pursue it, share it. You just think of it. And then when I do those things, when I think of thoughts, I'm like, oh, how cool is it that I have the ability to think of those? You know?
For sure.
But yeah, I think consciousness, something that's not talked about at all. Consciousness is not making the Snapchat page where it's like all those articles, or like the news or anything. No one's talking about that shit. And I don't know if there's a reason for that, but for some reason, when you start talking about consciousness, everybody thinks you're crazy.
I know.
Which actually makes that's actually completely opposite. If you're using your consciousness, that means you're conscious. If you're not, I would actually call you crazy, because you're so outside of consciousness that you're not even, you know what I mean?
Yes.
How are we at that point where it's like, it's frowned upon to think, which is so, and I'm trying to change that. And I know that there are other people out there like this.
Absolutely.
And people are scared, because I was scared too. It's scary. Like, you don't want to talk about this with everybody you meet because people look at you crazy. You know what I mean? Like, and then, but when you find someone that does this, it's like,
oh my God.
It's like you hit the lottery.
Oh
You're like,
God.
those are the people that I talk about this stuff with are like my closest friends in life, because it's just so real, you know, and we're scared to open up to people like that. And once you really do dig deeper in consciousness, you realize we're just all 100%. The same. And there's the one.
100%. Beautifully said. Very beautifully said. So what is the thing that you hope people take most away from your videos?
Well, they all kind of have different messages. I talk about a lot of stuff. I don't even like calling myself a philosopher, because philosopher tends to think about just thoughts. But I talk about like society, fucking thoughts, space, everything, just life. I kind of like to think of myself as what is life, because that's what my thoughts bound to. But what I want people to take away, I guess, is the fact that you can freely think. I think that you have the ability to think about whatever you want to think about. You don't have to, think about what everybody else thinks about or what's cool or anything like that. Does that make sense? Like, the power of free thinking is what I want people to agree. And like I said, whenever I put out a video and I say something drastic, people are like, oh my God, you're blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't necessarily like believe this. And I'm not pushing it. Like, I'm not like, this is it. This is right. This is right. This is right. I'm just like, this is a possibility. I'm throwing it out there, and think about it. And it could be right. It could be wrong, but think about it. Entertain me. Entertain the idea.
Let's talk about it for sure. Like, I think, like we were talking about earlier, the power of planting a seed and just having a conversation. Yeah. And just, you know what I mean? Like, neither of us have to be right. Neither of us have to be wrong. We can agree to disagree. But like, we can, there's so many possibilities when two people or more just get together and start talking about stuff and start being honest about the way they feel and how they see things, and just spitballing crazy shit or regular shit or whatever. Like, there's so much power in that we don't use enough.
Perspective. Here's the crazy thing about perspective. We all get one, right? But when we share it, it's unlimited almost. Now, when you share your perspective, now I basically live two lives almost, because now I know that I could have been like you. I could have had your perspective. You could have had mine. So it's so beautiful when you start really sharing perspectives with people, because then you become more than just yourself, if that makes sense. Like, you almost become multiple people, because, okay, I see something and then I'm like, all right, well, if I was that guy, if I had that perspective, I would probably see it like this. And it's almost like, once again, it's like oneness.
Right.
We really are. It almost feels like we're really just one being with a million cameras, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Sure. Like, and our eyes, our consciousness, our cameras are just watching from a million perspectives and a million ideas, and like computers, basically. You know what I mean? So like, once you share it, you're like, oh, that's how you work? That's so interesting. And that expands your consciousness.
For sure. Sometimes I think about it like, we all are just this one overall entity, and we're all like, I think So I think like in that way we're the universe experiencing itself, and it's like we're all these different reflections of the greater whole. We're all these different infinite perspectives coexisting together. How freaking nuts is that? Like we're
Yeah,
you know what, like that
insane.
is beyond wild and like magical and crazy and cool, and like we can meet so many different people, so many different perspectives and understandings that can help you see things differently or vice versa. And like that is a really, really cool thing.
Yeah, none of this shit makes
Yeah.
sense. Life
And I
doesn't
kind
make
of starting
sense.
to like
It's
that
actually
about it.
insane.
You know, I'm trying to just be
It's so
comfortable about
cool.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you have to find comfortability in it because it's actually when people think magic, they think of that bullshit that we've been like in comics and or like
Rabbit
in
in a
comics
hat.
and in stories and books, all that stuff. But like truly the magic of life is that you can't explain
Yeah.
it. Like that's like it's funny we say that we come into this earth, but we actually come from the earth. You know what I mean? Like we are born from because of this place existing. That's why we're
Right.
here. Like everything that you think of. I've been thinking about this. This blows my mind because it goes down a huge rabbit hole. Think of everything you've ever eaten, right? It's a lot. You've eaten a lot throughout your life. Now think of how many people had to eat so many things for you to be born.
Yeah.
Like your parents,
That's
a whole lifetime of them eating, then them eating, then them eating. It's all just a cycle of
That's
giving back to the earth, giving to us. You know, think about it, like you eat a cow dies, you eat it, and then you're gonna die one day, and you're gonna go into the earth, and then
the cow is gonna eat that grass.
At some point, a cow might eat you. Yeah,
the cycle of
like,
life.
It's just
wild.
this magical cycle. Yeah. It doesn't even fucking make
yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it really, really is, and it's something that I think people tend to fear a little bit more than they tend to be interested or intrigued or excited about it. And I'd love to help change that narrative because that's something I'm working on for myself, right? Like it's like none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow or a minute from now. Like anything could happen. And so it's like just trying to find the excitement in that rather than the fear in that, I think is really important. And it's just life changing when you do it like that.
It really is. It's crazy. I always am amazed at how a sentence sometimes, or just even a sentence can change your life. Sorry, my voice is.
I told you you're going to need the water.
I do, yeah. Yeah, one sentence. You could see a nice quote and you're like, wow, that just changed my mind on everything. Or one TikTok or one, podcast. It's crazy. We're just one idea away.
And we all underestimate our power so much. And that's something that I would love to share for other people. And it's something I constantly remind myself of. It's like we all have a power. We all have superpower, like you said. And we all have the power to change the world. And it doesn't have to be this big grandiose gesture. It can be these little things like having conversations or making videos that put yourself out there that might turn into a grandiose thing. But, every day there's something you can do that really impacts the rest of the world. Like the crazy thing about life too is that everything we do kind of affects everybody else at some point because you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the craziest thing. Like there are people that I will never meet in this life, but the energy of what they have done that rubbed off on other people, that rubbed off on other people, that rubbed off on other people, like it eventually just affects everything and everybody. And it's just mind blowing. So you
can't even describe it. Like it's literally magic. How do you even describe that? It's actually it's almost like the situation of happening and not happening. Like you can think about doing something for your whole life, but if you don't do it, you're actually having an effect too. It's weird because if I didn't do this happened, but if I did do it, then this didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like it's a cycle of things happening and not happening, which is so but it's so important to do things. Like it's important to act on your thoughts because we're not going to be here forever. Like you said, we don't even know if we're going to be here next minute. So it's really important to actually do something. That's the hard part though, because it takes courage to physically do something. And that's most of the time what has the biggest impact.
Absolutely. For sure. I've had so much fun talking with you today. I could talk to you for we could talk about so many things for hours. Like we truly, truly could. So I don't want to keep you forever. But no, I knew I would have such a great conversation with you just because I think regardless of, and because most of your videos I've seen, I'm completely like, oh my God, yes, I completely agree. And so, but
Yeah.
even if we didn't, like just being able to have this open-minded, like free thinking, deep thinking conversation is just like my favorite thing of life. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and being on here with me. And do you want to let people know where they can find you and where your content is and everything?
Yeah, so I got my own podcast coming up soon. It's going to be called the Esoteric Podcast.
Nice.
I'm super excited. I'll probably have you on.
Oh, please do. I would love to be on.
So yeah, that'll come out probably in January. I don't know when exactly, but that'll be there. It's called the Esoteric Podcast, and then you could also find me on TikTok at Doctorbangg Doctor Bang or Doctor period Bang.
I'll have everything of yours linked below. Anything that you want to put out there, I got you. I'll have a link below.
Sweet.
All right.
Well,
awesome. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. All right, guys, that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, learning, and growing with me. I hope you continue to do so. A huge thank you to Mark Taylor. Definitely go and check him out. I'll have all of his stuff linked down below, as well as my information. And as always, keep an open mind, do your own research, and think for yourself. Sending love. Bye, guys.